Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hey everybody, this is the Digital Asset Investor, and it turns out that here on CoinDesk, the YouTube channel of India's Supreme Court was compromised on Friday. The channel, which otherwise streams court cases for viewers and the press, showed videos promoting XRP. So India, the Indian Supreme Court promoting XRP. Brad Garlinghouse says, unfortunately, and it was scammers. They were trying to get you to give them their XRP, I think. Unfortunately, this feels like my annual PSA, and yes, I sound like a broken record. Ripple and execs will never ask you to send us XRP. It's pathetic to see scammers prey on and exploit innocent crypto users, and the ease at which social media platforms allow it to happen. Stop, spot, avoid, protect yourselves. I think this is an attorney. Let me see. Here it is right here. Chief Legal Officer at DeFi Education Fund. And she references the SEC versus Ripple. It's talking about how the SEC, how outrageous what they're doing now is.
I think we all had a visceral reaction to this footnote, especially the fake apology for any confusion it may have caused. I mean, talk about like the understatement of the year. So what they're referring to in their own footnote as dating back to the Telegram case, I think is such a disingenuous cite. Just to like nerd out for a second, what they are citing there is, you would think they're citing themselves, right? Because the sentence before the cite is, as we have maintained since the very first case. So you'd think they'd be citing something they wrote. They're not. They're citing the Telegram court opinion. So it's almost like saying, well, the court has been clear maybe on whether the assets themselves are securities, but the SEC has not. And I think that's the point. If you look at, I think almost every complaint they have filed in this space, they repeatedly say the tokens are investment contracts, or, you know, whatever it is, token X was offered as an investment contract. And in many cases, like in the Ripple case, for example, they take pains to say XRP is not a currency, it's an investment contract. So clearly they did think the tokens themselves were securities, but because that has not been
That's the whole reason that John Deaton decided to sue the SEC, is because they called XRP in and of itself a security, and he knew that wasn't true. Turns out so did the SEC. They lied. How many millions of dollars did Ripple spend to disprove what the SEC knew was a lie?
Winning litigation position for them. They are now taking the litigation position that they've never thought that the tokens themselves are securities, and that's just shorthand. I think that that's an advocacy position. Like, that's not the objective takeaway from their enforcement actions in the past.
Okay. Then Stuart Alderati had tweeted this out today. Professor Lee Reiners testified before Congress recently, and while there's much to critique, even this pro-SEC anti-crypto witness acknowledged the SEC's loss in the Ripple case, as well as a regulatory gap in the crypto spot market that only Congress can close. 2, securities laws can't hinge on a mystical decentralization threshold, Hinmans Fantasy, which is funny. The object of an investment contract, orange gross, isn't itself a security. It needs to be packaged with a management contract. And one last point we can all agree on: the SEC chairs come and go. But my favorite quote is the Hinmans Fantasy. Here's the this is head of crypto at PayPal. This is an interesting clip.
We've discussed this in past forums, but maybe just kind of starting at first principles. Can you discuss why PayPal decided to issue a stablecoin and why on Solana as the second part?
I think it's a three-part answer. PayPal has obviously been in payments for the best part of the last 25 years. And we are in crypto and we are in digital currencies because we are in payments. This is the first time I myself have been in payments for 20 years. If you look back at fintech innovation, 90% of that has been innovation in UX and innovation in fraud. Not a lot has been innovation on fundamental payment rails. So when we started to explore blockchain protocols, and we look at, oh, we can actually move value here between countries instantly. We can move it at a speed that is 26 times cheaper than ACH, that is 400 times cheaper than checks. And this was about 4 years ago. So I say, it will take a while, but this is too important for us not to have a chip on the table. So that's when we started to support crypto on the PayPal and Venmo apps in a few countries. That's when we started to go with our stablecoin project that went live last year. The first chain was Ethereum. We all know that Ethereum is not the best solution for payments. When we were looking at the primitives, if you're in retail payments, you need to be able to do 1,000 transactions per second at least. And you need to do a few of the things that differentiate a payment from a transaction. Sometimes when you're on the crypto side, people talk about payments when actually they're only talking about moving value from one wallet to another wallet. There is a ton in addition to that you need to do. You need to manage chargebacks. You need to manage confidentiality of transactions. So it was very easy when we're looking at where do we go next and what is the right chain for payments to look at what you all were building. It's not only the speed and it's not only the throughput who are important. We will talk about token extensions. Token extensions was a big driver for us.
Very cool.
Okay, interesting clip. So Ethereum's not good for payments. MicroStrategy has purchased 7,420 Bitcoins for about $458.2 million using the proceeds of its debt offering at an average price of about $61,750. They now hold 252,220 Bitcoin worth nearly $16 billion at current prices. Like I keep saying, for him, for Michael Saylor, it is either mansions and yachts or straitjackets. Actually, I would go far further than straitjackets, but I don't want to get graphic on this channel. There's no in-betweens for that guy. This subjective views, in my opinion, is right over the target when he says this. I can't say that on here. But listen, this is the CEO of Tether. I mean, this couldn't be more obvious that Tether's a government operation, folks.
Extent or stable coins and their concept is changing what central banks, what investment banking know about liquidity. I mean, when you look at liquidity models for investment banks, for central banks, to what extent do you think that we need new liquidity models, liquidity strategies to cope with the existence of stable coins?
Well, let me give you the example of USDT, right? Because it's very, very real. So with USDT, we have more than $100 billion in US Treasury bills, in short-term US Treasury bills. Think about China had around $2 trillion 2-3 years ago in US Treasury bills, and now has $700 billion, give or take. A company like Tether, that is a private company, has more US Treasury bills holdings compared to UAE itself, compared to Australia and Spain. So
we're talking about countries here.
Exactly. If we are not a country, right? So it's quite interesting how it's turning out. But let's think about what does it mean, right? If the U.S. government sells its debt to counterparties, the biggest counterparties are countries. Countries have a Minister of Finance and have a committee. They can decide to start selling holdings of USD bills, right? So what Tether does, and not many people think about it, is we have decentralized the ownership and decision-making of selling the US debt. We have 350 every time a person in Argentina purchases some USDT, we take that money and we buy T-bills. So we have 350 million. The decision to sell T-bills is decided by 350 million
You're not
people.
a government.
We are not a government, but also we are just a proxy. So we are not taking the decision. They are deciding. So it's much, much stronger. So we are helping the US dollar to become stronger, more resilient, more decentralized. It's something that is unprecedented. And
folks.
I'm really proud that Tether was able to start.
They're a proxy for the government. I want you to think about this for a minute as we go forward in crypto. If you are a company and you are allowed to issue a US dollar stable coin, which means, what does that really mean? That means, let's say that I am now allowed to create a crypto that's a US dollar stable coin. That means that somebody's allowing me to create, let's say I'm today I'm going to create $1 million, 1 for 1, of my new stable coin. That means that somebody is going to hand me either an exchange or somebody is going to hand me $1 million for those $1 million $1 million of stablecoin tokens, and then I get to turn around and buy something like T-bills with that $1 million so that it stays stable, right? So somebody's just awarded me a printing machine, and what I believe has happened here, I think the U.S. government wants to create a bunch of money printers around the world, maybe regulated here in the U.S., and they get to print, and so they're basically, it's like creating state or countries. Each company represents like a country that can buy more U.S. Treasury bills, thus supporting the U.S. dollar. Jake Chervinsky, I spent a lot of time on Choke Point when I was at Blockchain Association. It was the most Soviet thing I ever experienced. The regulators acted with unchecked lawlessness, but the only people withstanding to fight back were too scared for fear of retaliation. The truth comes out. He's referring to the Nick Carter, and these are all guys that are, to my knowledge, not supporting John Deaton yet. Speaking of John Deaton, there's a dirty little secret. We've seen the recent videos where all these commies are talking about wanting to penalize Americans for misinformation. The only problem there is the people that are calling for this are the same people that did misinformation in the 2020 election. Those are the same people that want to monitor you and declare what you said is misinformation are the same people that lied to us in 2020 and either censored true things or just called up Facebook or Twitter or whoever and said, you can't show this, and if you do, then you might have a problem with us. Those are the people who will be deciding whether what you're putting out is misinformation or not. And that's because they're commies. Elizabeth Warren came up with this idea before it was even fashionable.
Senator Elizabeth Warren's out.
This is back on the campaign trail in 2020.
Plan to punish companies that knowingly disseminate disinformation, specifically related to election campaigns. Now, the 2020 presidential candidate, who has famously been called out for several examples of disinformation about her own background, says she wants to impose civil and criminal penalties to those who are found guilty of disinformation. Some say this is unconstitutional. Some say it's just plain scary. What says Fox News senior judicial analyst Judge Andrew Napolitano about this? First question, Judge, who would decide what is...
That's the question. Who would decide? Oh, well, Elizabeth Warren and her friends do.
Disinformation.
Well, from minute one, this is unconstitutional. And you all know this line I'm going to quote. Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech. It is about as clear as can be. The whole purpose of the First Amendment presumes the listener, the reader, the speaker make those choices. The government does not. So this thing is dead in the water. I couldn't imagine a construct in that statute that would pass basic constitutional...
But just the procedural issue, forgive me, but just how do you put together a committee or whatever to decide what's truthful and what's not in this environment?
Given Senator Warren's other wishes to regulate other aspects of free human behavior, she would probably appoint, this is her favorite word, a czar to be in charge.
I was going to say the Politburo.
What language? Politburo here is even better. Jonathan,
really,
I'm thinking of you.
That's the beginning of the end, right? I mean, a speech czar, a truth czar.
Beginning
And David,
of the
to your
end.
point, I mean, it's so unbelievable. This is coming from Elizabeth Warren. She's the queen of disinformation. Her whole career is built on disinformation. You know, she actually plagiarized a recipe for a contribution she made to a Native American cookbook called Pow Wow Chow. I mean, she's all about lying.
And this is coming from a former Harvard Law School professor of Constitution.
I think you've heard enough. That's pitiful. Now, in DAIXRP.com, here's what we're going to talk about. There's something else that Senator Warren, where she's got a problem, and it involves that guy from the island. And I can't talk about it out here, but I'm going to talk about it in the group. I'm also going to show you some two other shocking things that are going on right now that has to do with, you know, those attempted things on X47. I'm the digital asset investor. I'm not an investment advisor. This is for entertainment purposes only. Please subscribe, hit the like button, tell your friends and family. Here we go.